What if everything holding you back in life and in leadership could shift with one simple question? In this episode, I talk to Brian Ridgway, the Spellbreaker, about what it really means to create your own reality. We explore the power of presence, the magic of your breath, and a game-changing question. How is this for me? If you're ready to unlock 100% freedom by embracing 100% responsibility, this episode is for you. Welcome to Rise to Lead, the podcast where heart-driven leaders come together to inspire and innovate. They will share actionable tips and insights that help you lead your team more successfully, advance your career or business as a leader, achieve greater impact, and experience deeper fulfillment. I'm your host, Regina Huber, guiding you through deep conversations about leadership that's rooted in service, freedom, and the desire to leave a positive mark on the world. Are you ready to create real change in your leadership, your career, your life? Join me for a complimentary Lead and Thrive session, a 60-minute one-on-one strategy session where we will discuss your specific needs and map out the next steps to lead yourself and others powerfully. Spots are limited, so don't wait. Visit transformyourperformance.com/Lead Thrive session to book your Lead and Thrive session today. Let's work together to make it happen. Welcome to Rise to Lead. You're in for a treat because today I am here with Brian Ridgway, the Spellbreaker and the founder of Level 5 Transformational Mentoring. And he's dialing in from Hawaii. Brian, welcome to the show.
Aloha. I'm really happy to be on with you.
Yeah, it's the show within the show, so to speak, right?
Mhm.
So great to have you here with us. Welcome, everybody listening. Brian is the Spellbreaker, and here's something I read on your website, and I think I want to read that, Brian. Beyond outdated self-help, endlessly rehashed, superficial positive thinking approaches and incomplete airy-fairy spiritual approaches lies the next level, the Level 5 paradigm and Spellbreak technology by Brian D. Ridgway. Among the ranks of great speakers delivering truly world-class content, Brian D. Ridgway brings something that is refreshingly original, his life spell breaks. So, Brian, I know I'm going to add more information about you in the description to this episode, of course, but I think this sums it up really nicely, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So we may rock a few boats here today together with this conversation, and I'm excited about that. And I'm happy that through this podcast, I can give you a stage where you can bring your message and your work to more people, because it's some of the most powerful stuff I have heard. When I first found you, which was, by the way, only a few months ago, I think it was July, August, around-ish. I thought back then this really, really resonates with me. So you speak my language just in a much better way, in a much more refined way, and I just thought to myself, this guy makes a lot of sense, and that's also why I decided to eventually to sign up for your program. So let's see what happens during our conversation here today.
Beautiful.
Okay, Brian, the first question that I'd like to ask you is, tell us about a time when things weren't exactly the same for you as they are today. So people can get an idea of where you are coming from, why you do this work. I know you said you were a self-help junkie, right? And you put a ton of money in self-help, like so many of us. So tell us more about that and how you eventually turned this around.
Yeah, well, so there's a few questions in there, and I'll answer. There was one, like why I do the work I do. Is the only answer that I have for that now is that I am doing what I am Like
Mhm.
I couldn't not do what I do. If I were to throw my business into the ocean and walk away within 5 minutes, I'd be sitting in front of someone who would say, "Man, I don't know why, but I feel like I can tell you my problems," and I would be helping the next person. So I'm just doing what I am. That's
Mhm.
a fact. And the gift that I have to help people, I've had since I was about 3 years old. However, the other side of that story is that I was born into, I would just say, a very unhappy home. My mother had been through so much; she was just carrying so much sadness. My father had been through so much; he was carrying so much anger. And I had an older brother and sister who were already miserable by the time I came on the scene. And so I was just in a hell of an existence for 42 years of my life. So the self help thing for me was not some side interest or a luxury, it was life or death. At 14, I found out about church, and I had some, neighbor people that went to church. Hey, can I go? That's supposed to make life better, and it didn't. And then around 17, I got into self help. And I remember from the very first book, every time a new book or course came along, it was the one that was supposed to work. It was the one that was going to help me make my life better. And nothing that I saw got anywhere near the roots. And so I ended up at 42, I was homeless, suicidal. I just wanted to end my life. If I didn't have kids, I would have ended my life. The pain was so unbearable, and the conflicting information in the self-help and spiritual options. I mean, I had studied virtually everything, I would say, by that point, so much of it. And I understood quantum physics to a fairly high level. I knew by that point that I was creating my own reality. Like I had gone to a place of personal responsibility that most people just won't go. Like I reached the place of no, I admit I am creating it all, the good and the bad. This is my creation, but I'll be damned if I could figure out how to change it and make it go more the way that I desire. I couldn't get it to work. And even stranger, I was this gift that I have, I was able to help people in the most profound ways, and I couldn't quite see how to turn it to help myself. And then the way that I came out of that was I had at the lowest point that I could reach, I had an awakening experience where I stepped into, the way I like to say it is, I went from the idea that everything is one and everything is energy. I stepped into knowing it and living it. And so that was 42, so 18 years ago, amazingly. And I have been living pretty much in heaven ever since.
Yes, and we hear some of the beautiful heaven background background. I don't want to even call it noises because it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I used to live in a tropical climate myself for quite some time, a little bit in Miami Beach, but also a longer period of time in Rio de Janeiro. So
Mm.
I can definitely appreciate that. Yes, and you know what? A lot of what you said also, so while it could have resonated with me when I was younger, I was in a completely different place, right? So one thing that I knew for sure, I grew up in a Catholic household. One thing I knew for sure at 15 years old, that I did not want to have anything to do with that. And I left the church. Back then what happened is uh, it was actually written in our IDs, and we had to officially pay money to leave the organization, which I did. I paid my monthly allowance. And then I was searching for alternatives, though, and I couldn't find them. Right.
Hmm.
And so, even though studying other religions, studying other options, but I definitely was in a different place than you. Like, I wouldn't really have thought of the typical self-help world back then. And I know we are actually the same age because I happen to know the year you were born in. I don't know where that came up. So, anyway, um, really, really awesome story. Thank you for sharing it with us. And yes, there was this time when you felt this unbearable pain, right? And I also read somewhere this death experience that you literally had. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and it's really interesting that every time I look back at it, I am more, oh, wait, I somewhere, somehow, I didn't really factor in the role that that death experience played in
Mhm.
the awakening. Looking back now, it's really obvious to me, but so I was 16 years old, got on my 10-speed bike, no protective gear to put it mild. I was just wearing a pair of shorts and tennis shoes, and I was going top speed down a hill and got hit by a car. And so I was dead for probably about 30 minutes. And
Wow.
people talk about near death. I as an energy being, I watched myself die. I watched it happen. And my only thought, it wasn't really thinking, my thought was, oh, I guess that's over with. I wonder what's next. And there was no attachment. And so during that, I had an experience that I jokingly say this experience either lasted 30 minutes or 10,000 years. I'm not sure. But during it, what I basically did was I continued to ask, I wonder if I could do this. And I was able to do it. I wonder if I could do this. And I discovered what life is like without a body, or you could say before the body or between bodies. I don't know. Um, that I was simply a bubble of awareness and with the capacity to ask, could I do this and be able to do it? And now, with that experience behind me, I see our bodies in a very different way than I've ever heard anyone talk about. I see our bodies as symbols of, our bodies are like a collection of symbols showing us what capacities we have. So seeing, we don't need eyes to see, we don't need ears to hear. It's a whole nother, topic that I don't usually speak on, but you bring it up. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Oh, it's super interesting though. Super interesting. And you got some applause in the background again, and that sounded like my home because I grew up on a farm.
Oh,
But
yeah.
anyway.
All over the Hawaiian Islands, there's wild chickens just everywhere. So yeah, we're used to that.
Yeah, it's so cool. I know this from other places I lived in too. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's beautiful. Okay, I want to talk about something that you say a lot, right? You say 100% responsibility equals 100% freedom. And
Yeah.
this resonates so much with me, even though it's not an easy task to live it, right? So talk to us about that. What exactly do you mean by that?
Yeah, and I was alluding to that with what I said,
Yeah.
even before the awakening experience. I had reached this place of no, I'm doing this. So
Mhm.
what I see and what I mean by this, some would say it is a very challenging thing to consider, and we can address why, if you want, why that's so challenging for people and how to maybe make it less challenging. But at any rate, when you accept the possibility that you might be the creator of your reality. Like a lot of people say it, but then they immediately go into denying it. Well, not that bad stuff. Well, which is it, right? So, as I see it, anything that I don't claim responsibility for, let's just say, here's a company over here that's making billions of dollars intentionally poisoning people or whatever, an industry like that. I look at that and I say, what in me is reflecting as that. And this would be a great place for me to just say a minute of my philosophy. The way that I view life is that the universe is not something out there at all. And this is another thing that a lot of people say, but they don't follow it to what they say it. The universe is not really out there, but then they immediately go back to living as if it is. All right. So, what would it be like to look and say there is no universe out there, and then live it? Well, how would I come to grips with that so that I could live it? And here's how I do. I see the universe as a reflection, like a multi-dimensional reflector mirror. However, multi-dimensional, so it's light and sound and everything else. So it's reflecting in all dimensions. And what it is a reflection of my consciousness and everything I think, everything I believe, everything I know, everything I'm avoiding, everything that I've hidden and denied from myself, that I'm not, whether I'm taking responsibility for it or not, it's all reflecting to me. So when I look at that and I say, How am I creating this? Or why am I creating this? I'm taking responsibility for it as my creation. And only then can I actually change it. And I watch the vast majority of people around me who are looking at things out there that they're trying to change, they're fighting to change, and they haven't noticed that they're not making any progress, because when you're arguing with a mirror, if you're looking in a mirror, and you're frowning and you're telling the mirror to smile, it's not going to work. And if you do that for long, you're going to look pretty freaking crazy. And that's where I see the majority of people are, that have stepped into spirituality and they're talking about it, but they just haven't decided to, okay, how do I live this? So I have formulated a sentence where I now say 100% total personal responsibility is 100% total personal freedom, and it reactivates 100% of your total personal power to be able to change whatever you want. You cannot change your creation while you're denying that you're creating it.
Right. Right. Yes. And it's all about, not just understanding it rationally, but integrating it and
Yeah,
and really living it. And that's, of course, the more challenging part. It requires practice and it requires being present.
exactly.
So you teach a specific way of breathing. Um, and what is being present even? Let's talk about both.
Yeah, that is probably one of the most frustrating things for the majority of people. I remember many, many years ago when I found Eckhart Tolle. I love him, love his teachings. I consider him 100% legit, real deal. There are very few of those currently out, available to us in the self-help and spiritual industry. He's the real deal. And when I encountered that he is present, and I encountered what his life is like now that he is present, and I realized he wasn't helping me to be present. I was kind of frustrated. And I've talked to so many people that are like, yeah, I mean, it's great. I love it. But how do you do it? And they do have, he and Kim, they offer some practices that certainly support. But I mean, what about becoming present? Like, to me, I start with the fact that if you're not present, you're suffering. If you're not present, you're misperceiving everything that is. If you're not present, you mistakenly think that this mirror of your consciousness is a universe out there and that there's something wrong that you got to fix and that you're powerless, basically. So, not being present is hell. Literally, it's hell. And being present takes you back into your power and your peace and prosperity and all the other wonderful P's that we could all enjoy. And so my question would be, how does one become present? Like, that is the only question that matters. And I'll go further to say that until you are present, you will be suffering, period. And to become present is actually shockingly easy. And it's shockingly simple. In fact, it's so simple that most people won't do it. But before I go into the how, I'll add something to this. You've mentioned a couple times it can be challenging. And I'm going to say one of the reasons that it's challenging is, as children, and this is something that we could go down a very deep rabbit hole. I want to give the simplest thing that'll be beneficial to whoever's hearing this. When you were a child and you learned that responsibility was bad, responsibility meant that you were going to get your butt kicked. Responsibility meant you're in trouble. Responsibility includes blame and punishment in the vast majority of people's minds, and that was beaten into us, and it's also false. Responsibility means that you have the ability to respond, and that's all it means. So it's kind of weird. It's almost like there's some giant conspiracy to make virtually everyone not want to be responsible so that they won't have any power. And I'm not saying it's literally true, but we're each creating our reality anyway. So if there is a conspiracy to make us not want to be responsible, then I'm the one creating it. I own that, and I decided to change it for myself. So to become present is to wake up. Even enlightenment, I'll take a liberty here. I just saw a glimpse of something. I would say that the entire thing about enlightenment is just pure BS. The entire thing. The whole fascination and the industries that sell enlightenment and all the books and all the courses, the fact enlightened the enlightened state is being present. End of story. There's nothing mystical. There's nothing mythical. There's nothing fancy. There's nothing like if you hear the great masters that ended up in retrospect writing, they all say it's nothing special. It's just bliss, which is kind of special, but it's nothing special because it's actually our normal state. We've just really practiced how to get stuck in hell, and we've all mastered it so that we could have these crazy experiences in life. Now, how do you do it? What I have found is that, presence is the portal to the present moment. It's the portal to tap into the actual truth of what is rather than the illusion that we've all been fighting with. And to do that is to become centered in, if you look around, it's pretty evident that you are the center of the universe, whether other people like it or not. I'm the center of the universe for me. You're the center of the universe for you. So start at the center of the universe. What is the nearest and dearest to you? It's your body, it's your physicality in the present moment. So bringing full presence and attention to the body through the most fundamental need we have, which is the breath, and then breathing. Like, no one would disagree that breathing is necessary for life. No one's going to disagree with that. Well, then what about this question? If breathing is the most fundamental necessity for life in a body, is it possible that there's a way or a mode of breathing that's optimal? And it just happens that there is. And so I call this the 5-layer breath. In the simplest form, you're breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. There's a switch in the top of your mouth that if you start to understand energy bodies and meridians and the chakras and all that, you get deeper into it, but you don't need to understand any of this. There is a switch that opens and closes when you open and close your mouth. It's closed now. It's open now. And when you open and close that in a cyclical manner with breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth, and then getting the air down into your belly, you're beginning to breathe optimally, which turns some of your higher faculties in your brain and your nervous system on. It takes you out of fight or flight, which most people are chronically in, whether they know it or not. And it takes you out of, you could say, addictions and all other compulsive behaviors and all that type of stuff as you begin to become present. And then if you continue, you actually begin to detect the presence that we've all heard of. And if you continue beyond that, you become aware, oh, wait, I am that presence that I was looking for and saying was so far away for all these years. It's really that simple.
Wow, yeah. And I've seen your breathing videos where you, of course, explain it in detail and it's so super clear. Like, you cannot not understand it when you watch those videos. It's really beautiful. Um, so yeah, thanks for sharing that. Maybe some of our listeners are already now inspired to breathe a little bit more consciously and differently. I hope so.
I invite it, I encourage it.
Yes. Here's another thing that I've heard you say over and over. When we look at, and I'm going to read this, I wrote it down somewhere. When we look at what we want to experience and take a step towards it, we will rapidly come face to face with everything we've placed between ourselves and that.
Yeah.
I sort of know what you what you know mean by that, but let's explain it to our listeners as well. So,
You know, that's really one of my core statements, you could say. And it's frankly kind of a pain in the ass. It's one of the challenges in life. But I invite anyone to ever attempt to debate that or disprove it, even though it's so far out and it's kind of incomprehensible at first, and there's a lot packed into that one sentence. So it definitely bears being unpacked. And here's what I mean by that. If you do accept the possibility that you're creating your reality, if you accept that possibility, then that would mean that anything that you desire, you're creating. And anything that's between you and what you desire is also your creation. So it starts with this fundamental idea. This statement takes total personal responsibility, right? And so, the vast majority of us have shrunk away from what we desire. And most of us, to the point, like one of the biggest questions I get is, well, Brian, what do you do when you don't know what you want? I said, that's really clever. You were able to manufacture the illusion that you don't know what you want. That's so cute. And a lot of people do. And there's
Yeah.
reasons why we do. There's reasons why we did that. Okay. When we were kids and we learned that asking for what we want gets us in trouble. Getting what we want gets us sometimes in more trouble. The hell that can come from asking for what you want, and often from getting what you want, we say, screw it, I'm just not going to want anything. But of course, your desires don't go anywhere. They just go underground. And now you're basically crazy trying to manipulate and deceive yourself and others to get what you still want, while trying to tell yourself you don't have any wants because it hurts too much. And, I go pretty deep into that in other areas. That's a simple enough understanding of it. So when you do decide, you know what, screw it, I'm going to go for what I want. I am going to take a step. This relationship that I've always wanted, this more money that I've always wanted, this nicer house that I've always wanted, whatever it may be. As you turn your consciousness and your awareness towards what you actually prefer, and you even begin to move towards it, you naturally, necessarily come directly into contact with why you weren't going for it, which I say it's what you put between yourself and that. Ultimately, that is also yourself, but it's aspects of yourself that you have cut off, that you've denied, that have now they're showing up as something that definitely doesn't look like you. You don't recognize that as yourself. And so what most people do is they go into war with what shows up, or they give up and retreat back to their television and say, screw it, I knew it wasn't worth it. And guess what? If you're present when you turn towards what you prefer, you won't misperceive those things that come up. You'll recognize, oh my God, this is happening for me. This is what's necessary. This thing that I'm facing is what's necessary for me to go through in order to get and experience what I do want. So you begin, you know, you said we might rock a few boats. I am notorious for killing sacred cows, and a lot of the common spiritual things that people say, like people say, "Oh, the universe has your back." Well, that's a nice fantasy, but 5 seconds ago you admitted that there's no universe out there, and now you're saying the universe has your back. So which is it? And if the universe has your back, probably just be a matter of minutes before it doesn't.
Yeah,
And
and I've said it too, but
uh-huh.
but now I'm also becoming, of course, much more conscious. I thought I was already quite conscious with my language because I'm pretty much like a wordsmith. I studied a lot of different, foreign languages, so that comes a little bit automatically with it. So I question words, but now I
Yeah.
question them even more, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's,
Especially the spiritual BS. I mean,
yeah,
it's all well intentioned. Well, most
yeah,
of it's well intentioned.
yeah, I know. Yeah, we could go there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, and you mentioned it already now. So, one of my favorite questions has become, how is this for me? Um, I sort of had a similar question before that I was using too, but now I'm using it, first of all, much more often, much more frequently, and much more consciously. And I had maybe some different versions of it in the past, which wasn't always exactly maybe that question. I really love this simple question though, and it served me really well so far. Can should we give our audience a bit more context around this question, or what do you
Yeah,
think?
absolutely, absolutely. And I tell you one thing I'm really loving about this conversation, Regina. You are really asking the key questions, and you're really asking them in like a phenomenally helpful order. I don't know. I've done dozens of interviews, and I don't know if there's one recorded anywhere that's going to be as helpful and beneficial to the person who hears it. So yeah, we'll put some energy behind this one, getting out and really touching some people, because you're really asking the questions in the perfect order as well. So what this is rooted in, this question, how is this for me? It ties into, if all is one, and if I'm creating my reality, And if presence is the key, and if I'm misperceiving when I'm not present, and now I'm beginning to dare to turn to consider what might I want, what might I desire, what might I actually prefer to experience, and dare to move into and admit that I want it, and that I'm going to go for it. When I do that and these things occur that look like what I don't want, I was going to go make more money, and I did. And immediately my tire blows out and my air conditioner quits working and my refrigerator, why does this happen to me is one of the main questions that people ask. And in the law of attraction world, so many people, well, why did I create this again? Or how did I attract this again? And all of that is misperception of how the universe works. And that misperception will keep you swimming in the same muddy water for as long as you're holding those misperceptions. So an alternative question is to look at whatever it is that's happening, whether it's what you wanted or not. You look at it. Don't make it something it isn't. Look at what it is and ask, how is this for me? In other words, this thing that just happened, how is this a gift to me? And something happens there. We could go really, this is a topic that we could easily go hundreds of hours into really plumbing the depths of. To keep it real simple, I will say that when you begin to presume that life is, and that the universe is you reflecting back to you, well, then everything that's happening has to be for you. So, getting a little bit of windy here. That might make a little noise on your thingamajig. We can edit.
Yes, the wind a little bit. Yes.
So then, when you begin to presume that what's happening is happening for you, then you can find how it's actually happening for you and for your benefit. And from there, from presence, you will begin to recognize that it's actually you doing it for yourself. And it becomes this place of awareness where everything that's happening, especially the stuff you don't like and don't want and don't prefer, becomes welcome, because you know that you're digesting it and transforming it, transmuting it into what you do prefer.
Right. Yes.
That you can't while you're asking, why did this happen to me again?
Again.
What's
Yeah.
wrong with
Especially the
yeah,
again.
yeah, again.
Again. Oh, even the question, why did I create this now again, holds blame. So it's really much healthier and probably much more beneficial to say, how is this for me? So that I can actually then do something with the answer, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Can't find the benefit in something that you're looking for the flaw in.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I want to quickly, and I know we've been going for a while now. I want to quickly, though, because I think this is important, right? Go to something else, to the thought or to the idea of positive thinking, and how it's always talked about. Oh, just think positively and everything's going to fall into place, or don't have negative thoughts, right? Um, so I'm saying it all in quotation marks already.
Oh yeah.
Do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously can't do anything about that wind. I know
Yeah.
that there's some great software that'll reduce that for the
Well,
listener.
we'll try that. Yeah.
So here's the deal. Ultimately, I used to say that positive thinking is just total bullshit.
Uh-huh.
Ultimately, and I don't mean that as harsh. Someone who that's their hope. Positive thinking is their hope. Like that's all I got, Brian. This is what I've heard from all the great self-help gurus. Don't take away my freaking hope. Well, I understand that. But define, and I don't mean for you right now, Regina, but define
Mhm.
positive. I mean,
Mhm.
give me an accurate, complete. You don't even know what you mean by positive. You think you do. You have a vague idea. You heard people say it. You thought that sounds good. If positive is better than negative, right? Well, with electricity, there's never been a battery with only a positive post that ever was able to charge any device or do any work. No electricity has only a positive. So it's a complete misunderstanding. You can't say what is positive. You cannot say what's negative except for the posts on a battery or on a magnet. And that's not a judgment or some arbitrary, it's two words that are used to talk about polarity. It has no relevance to humanity. It has no relevance to sanity. It has no relevance to how you live your life because it doesn't mean anything. So, for example, someone says, well, I feel really sad about this event that happened, and someone comes along and says, oh, you're being negative. That's absolutely ridiculous. If you feel sad and you allow yourself to fully feel the sadness, it will dissolve back into your power. There's nothing negative about that. If you look at something back in someone's life, I've worked with a lot of people that have had sexual trauma, many of them to the point of having been raped multiple times by a family member while they were a child. Now, I don't think anybody in the world is going to say that's a positive experience, but almost everybody says it's a negative experience. And I then say, yeah, but what if that experience led this person to experiences and wisdom and insight and healings that turn their life into an incredible miracle that never would have happened without that experience? Well, does that make it positive? No, it's not positive or negative. It's what happened. And if we would quit interpreting, see, when we're not present, we're trying to determine what's positive and negative so we can be right and safe and give the right answers, which of course is impossible. When we're present, we see that it is experience. It isn't positive or negative, it's experience. And you can take any experience and transmute it into what you prefer unless you're judging it as negative, which locks you up in hell again on a whole nother dimension. Because now you're not only suffering what is, you're judging what is and trying to right a wrong that isn't wrong. So it's really needless. At best, it's needless, but ultimately it's completely counterproductive to even think in those terms. And once someone rises into presence, like positive and negative don't exist in my universe at all anymore. Good, bad, right, wrong, positive, negative, all those things that our parents and religions and society told us, what's right and wrong. And you went, okay, I don't know what you mean, but I can see that I had better pretend I do. So yes, I'll buy your bullshit about right and wrong.
Yeah. It also has to do, this is also has to do with knowing and unknowing. Then, like you think you know something that actually can limit your, limit your creation of what you would like to have, what you
Totally.
prefer, right?
It literally locks you into endlessly creating the same nightmare.
Mhm.
So you can't create what you prefer
Right,
while you're constantly recreating the same nightmare.
right. So my personal experience since I found you, which was interesting actually, because I was just finishing writing my second book in the summer, and it just was published a few days ago. So, well, when this airs, it might have been a couple of weeks ago. So what happened is on one of the last pages, I wrote something like, I will be finding the missing piece. It wasn't exactly that, but something to that extent. The missing piece that I need for my own freedom, so to speak. And a couple of days later, I found your work. Isn't that interesting, right? But also, what's really given me, and that's really what I wanted to get to, is I'm currently in one of those situations that I created for myself once again. It's very similar to a previous situation that I will need to resolve. And I found that sometimes I created those situations so that I could prove to myself that I can do this, I can resolve this, and I can blah, 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 right? And I'm just now not wanting that anymore. I decided. However, I know that I still have to resolve this, or resolve. I was gonna say first, but actually it's maybe gonna dissolve, right? So we can talk about that. But So I know that I still am in this situation. I'm going to deal with it, but I'm just more peaceful about it. That's what I can say. And I'm not worrying about it all the time. And I just know that it's gonna resolve itself at some point. It's not that I'm not taking the steps. That's not what I mean. But I don't have to freak out about it. And I mean, the title of my new book is actually Living My Freaking Amazing Life. So I don't want to freak out anymore. I only want to go from freaking out to freaking amazing every time, or not have to do that anymore, actually. Right.
Yeah,
Or not as often. So yeah. And I have to say, I'm really excited that I'm going to be one of the practitioners. And I'm already having beautiful experiences with clients using some of what I have learned here. So I'm just seeing such amazing results, getting great feedback, super excited about this work. I wanted to say this before we close today. And also for anybody listening who is wondering, what does this have to do with leadership and rise to lead? I want to say this has everything to do with it. First of all, leadership is first and foremost about leadership of yourself. You need to lead yourself first to be able to inspire others, right, around you, whether that's your community, your team, or whoever it is. And I think this is the ultimate leadership of one's life and of self.
I agree 100%. Yeah, because we're always leading in some direction.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, whether we want to or not, whether we are aware of it or not, we always create our reality, but we
yep,
could do it a bit more consciously, maybe.
indeed.
Absolutely. So I want to close, unless you want to share anything else. You of course welcome to do that. I want to close on my part with a Brian quote that I absolutely love. And it goes like this, right? I need to read this again. So, no matter how many turns you take in life, you will always end up on the corner of infinite and possibilities. And to me, that means there's no need to be afraid of making the wrong choice, doing the wrong thing. And that is just very reassuring for a lot of people, I believe.
Yeah, truly. And that's one of my own favorite quotes as well. And
Okay.
when you wake up and realize that you are infinite, eternal energy, that you actually don't die, that you have forever to play and create, something shifts when you look at, wait, you mean I can't actually make a wrong move? I can't actually make a wrong turn. I can't be so far off that I can't turn it around. Life becomes fun and
Mhm.
magical again.
Absolutely. Yes. It's beautiful. A beautiful way to close this out. So thank you so much for coming on with us, Brian.
Thank you, Regina. It's been great. I'm really, really, really glad we had this conversation.
I am too. Thank you. And thanks to everyone listening. I'm curious what you think about this and how it inspires you to take 100% responsibility in your life. I'll catch you next time. Thank you for tuning in to Rise to Lead. Keep shining your light, standing up for what's right, and inspiring others to step into their brilliance. If you liked this episode, please give it a 5-star rating and subscribe to the Rise to Lead podcast on your preferred podcast app. Until next time, it's Regina Huber, and in the meantime, remember to rise to lead.